Jack Mercer woke before the alarm the way he always did. For a moment, he lay still in the dark, counting Lily's breaths in the next room. 1, 2, 3. A small catch on 4. He listened for the soft mechanical hiss that meant the nebulizer had done its job. When it came, he exhaled quietly and rolled out of bed. The apartment was cold. Old radiators, old windows, old everything. Outside somewhere past the cracked blinds, the harbor cranes of Baltimore were just faint outlines against a bruised sky. Inside, the kitchen light flicked on with a tired buzz. Jack crossed to the counter. The battlefield was already laid out. Orange juice carton, plastic cup with a black marker line drawn 1 inch down, water pitcher, 3 orange pill bottles standing at attention, inhaler, a cheap digital timer with a crack across the display. He picked up the cup and poured juice to the marker, then topped it off with water. The precise ratio made the liquid a little pale, but he did not glance at it. He had done this hundreds of times. Full-strength juice sometimes triggered Lily's cough. Diluted juice did not. Pattern observed, pattern corrected. He turned to the bread. 2 slices in the toaster, eggs in the pan. The sizzle sounded louder in the quiet kitchen, followed by the soft scrape of his spatula. He moved like someone following a plan he had written himself down to the timing on each motion. 1 slice of processed American cheese tore neatly in half. He laid it over the eggs and waited until it melted through, not quite runny, not quite firm. He slid the eggs onto the plate. The toast popped up. He cut each slice into neat triangles. Lily did not trust squares. She had explained it to him once with the seriousness of a tiny diplomat. Triangles, she said, were for big kids. Squares were for babies. Circles were chaos. Triangles it was. He set the plate on the little dining table. The table had once been something else. The legs did not match the top. He had found it at a thrift store, then sanded and stained, until it almost looked intentional. 1 corner still wobbled if you leaned on it too hard. He heard a cough from the bedroom, not the hollow, panicked one that meant trouble, but the rough morning sound of lungs figuring things out. Jack poured coffee into a chipped mug, took a swallow that was still too hot, and headed down the short hallway. Lily's room was a riot of color in a gray apartment. Drawings taped to the walls, stuffed animals lined up along a narrow bed, a small bookshelf that sagged in the middle. The nebulizer sat on a milk crate by the nightstand, tubing coiled like a sleeping snake. Lily was sitting up, hair sticking out in all directions, nose pink. Her pajamas had cartoon clouds on them. "Morning bug," Jack said. She squinted at him. "Is it school?" "Nope. Doctor day tomorrow. Practice breathing day today. Breakfast now." Her eyes moved to the inhaler on the nightstand. He watched her shoulders tighten, then relax. She reached for it with the careful hand of someone handling a weapon or a secret. 2 puffs, he reminded. "Slow in, slow out." "I know," she muttered, but there was no heat in it. She followed the rhythm he had drilled into her. Inhale, hold, exhale, tiny chest rising and falling. He stayed until her breaths evened out, then nodded toward the kitchen. At the table, Lily climbed into her chair and immediately leaned over a sheet of paper. A plane was already taking shape there in thick pencil lines. Big wings, big windows, mountains underneath jagged and dramatic. "Triangles," she announced. "Mountains are basically just triangles, right?" "Engineers might disagree with you," Jack said, "but sure." He put the plate down. She turned it so the toast formed a neat little peak on the edge. "See mountains," she said, satisfied. She took a bite, then looked up at him. Her eyes were a deep, serious brown that did not match her age. "Daddy," she said around a mouthful, "will the mountains in Colorado be bigger than the buildings downtown?" "Much bigger. Like really, like so big the buildings would get scared if they saw them." She giggled, then coughed again. It was a dry sound, short and sharp. Jack kept his face calm, but his hand tightened slightly around the back of her chair until the cough passed. "Are we going to see the snow on top?" she asked. "Maybe from the plane. Some peaks keep their snow even in summer." "That's weird," she said. "Snow should follow the rules. Mountains make their own rules." She chewed that over while she drew tiny stick figures in the plane windows. She labeled 1 me and 1 dad in crooked letters, then drew arrows to make sure there was no confusion. Her brow furrowed. "Daddy," she said, "what do heroes look like?" The question sounded casual, but he knew her well enough to hear the tension under it. He washed his mug in the sink to give himself a second. "Depends who you ask," he said finally. "Like in the movies, they have the cool suits, capes, masks." "In the movies, sure. What about real ones?" He dried his hands on a towel. "Real ones," he said, "mostly look like people waiting in line. People who get coffee, people who forget their umbrellas when it rains. She considered him with an unblinking stare. "Do they ever look like you?" she asked softly. He met her eyes. For a moment, something old and sharp moved behind his expression, then slid out of sight. "Sometimes," he said, "when they're lucky." She seemed satisfied with that. She went back to her drawing. He watched her shoulders. A slight hitch. She was getting tired. They had not even reached the hospital yet. On the counter beside the pill bottles, a cheap laptop waited. He opened it with 2 fingers as if it might recoil. The screen was cracked in one corner, but it still worked. The email had arrived at midnight. Subject line, consultation opportunity, urgent. The sender name was a long string of letters and numbers that would have meant nothing to anyone else. To him, it might as well have been a knock on the door. He clicked the message again. A private defense contractor wanted him to review electronic warfare protocols at the Falcon Ridge Defense Summit in Colorado. 3 days of work, cash payment. No formal paperwork mentioned, no public record attached. The money would cover the flights, the motel. The consult fee would almost pay for the first round of tests Lily needed in Denver. On the browser bar, another tab waited. The Denver Hospital portal. A message from a pediatric pulmonologist about an opening in an experimental treatment program. He could hear Ms. Alvarez's voice in his head. Their neighbor had been delighted about the idea of mountains and doctors. "You take her, Jack," she had said. "Kids should see something big while they are still small." He closed the laptop. His hand drifted to the top of the refrigerator, feeling for the envelope taped there. Inside was a credit card with a low limit and higher interest. He had written in black marker on the front, "Emergency only." Lily swung her legs under the chair, tiny heels thumping. "Are we really going to fly?" she asked. "Like in a real plane? Not just the kind on TV?" "Yeah," he said. "In a real plane. What if the plane breaks?" "Planes are safer than cars," he said. "They check everything a bunch of times. There are rules." "Do they check if the wings are still there?" she asked. "Especially the wings." "Good. Wings wings seem important." He smiled and reached for her empty cup. In the living room, the old radio on the shelf crackled for a second, catching some distant station and losing it again. Just static. A thin line of sound here, then gone. Jack glanced toward it. His eyes went from the radio to the hallway closet. The closet door stuck a little when he opened it. Inside, jackets crowded each other, hangers bent. On the top shelf, an unmarked shoebox waited in the dust. He took it down carefully and set it on the bed in his room. For a moment, he just looked at it. Then he lifted the lid. Inside, among a folded patch that read "Phantom" and a few photos with edges cut off, lay a small device the size of his palm. Matte metal corners worn smooth, one tiny recessed button. The strap was frayed where it had once been attached to his wrist. He picked it up. It was heavier than it looked. Years ago, someone had ordered him to destroy it. Years ago, he had decided to ignore that order. A stupid, sentimental choice, he had told himself. Useless. The frequencies were dead. The network had moved on. The call signs had been reassigned. Ghosts did not get callbacks. He closed his hand around it, feeling the cool metal against his skin. From the other room, Lily started humming a song from a cartoon. The sound was thin but steady. She coughed once, lightly. He listened. The cough faded. He lowered the device back into the box, but he did not let go. His fingers tightened until his knuckles went white. Doctor in Denver. Money he did not quite have. A contract from people who still spoke his old language. A child whose lungs were losing ground. Jack set the device aside for a moment and reached up to peel the envelope from the top of the fridge. He slid it open and slid the credit card into his wallet. Emergency only, he thought. This counts. He looked toward the kitchen doorway. Lily was at the table again, erasing and redrawing the wings on the plane in her picture. Each time she redrew them, they got a little larger. He checked the time on the cracked digital timer. If he booked the flight before noon, they could be in Colorado by the following evening. "Hey, Bug," he called. "Yeah." "Finish your mountains. We have to pack tonight." "For real?" she asked, eyes wide. "For real." Her grin made the worn linoleum seem less tired, the walls less gray. She bent over her drawing with new energy, pencil scratching quick lines. Jack wiped his hands on a dish towel, then pulled the laptop toward him again. He opened the airline website and began to type. The tickets sat in Jack's email like a decision he could not take back. He printed them anyway. Paper felt safer. You could hold paper. You could stack it with other things that mattered. On the small counter next to the microwave, he laid out 3 neat piles, boarding passes, copies of Lily's medical records, and a folder with the hospital's information. Lily pressed her nose to the window. while he worked drawing smiley faces in the condensation. "Do planes have snack time?" she called. "They have snacks," he said, not sure about snack time. "Can I have pretzels, if they have them?" She turned from the glass. "What if I get hungry in the sky? You get hungry everywhere." She grinned. He slipped the fee folder into his backpack and checked the inhalers again. 2 in the carry-on, 1 in his jacket pocket. Prescription bottles lined up in a plastic bag. The small nebulizer went into its own padded case. He wrapped it in a sweatshirt that still smelled faintly like laundry soap and plaster dust. He eyed the shoebox on his bed. The device lay inside where he had left it, pale metal against cardboard. For a second he considered leaving it. For 7 years it had done nothing except remind him of things that were gone. He picked it up and slid it into the hidden pocket sewn into the inside of his sleeve. Leaving it felt worse. By the time Ms. Alvarez knocked to say goodbye, the apartment looked like a place someone was only borrowing. Dishes washed, trash taken out, Lily's drawings straightened on the wall, the little cactus on the windowsill watered just enough. "You bring me back a picture of those mountains, eh?" Ms. Alvarez said, gathering Lily into a hug that smelled like flour and fabric softener. "I will draw them," Lily promised, "with extra snow." Jack thanked her for feeding the cat that was not actually theirs and for checking the mail. She waved him off. "You take care of the important things," she said, nodding toward Lily. "The rest is just noise." The drive to the airport took them along the harbor. Lily flattened her hands on the backseat window, calling out every boat she saw. The taxi heater blew air that was only slightly warmer than outside. Jack kept his hands open on his knees the way he did in cars he did not drive. At Baltimore-Washington Airport, the automatic doors breathed them in with a gust of heated air and the smell of coffee and disinfectant. Lights buzzed overhead. Announcements echoed off high ceilings. Lily's steps slowed as she took it all in. People moved in streams around them, rolling suitcases, hoisting backpacks, tapping phones. Somewhere a child cried. Somewhere else a barista called out a name no one answered. Jack shifted the backpack on his shoulder and took Lily's hand. "Stay with me," he said. "I am staying," she said. "You are tall. It is hard to lose you." Security was a familiar pattern for him. Shoes off, laptop out, liquids in a bag. He watched the line counting guards scanning exits. The habit did not make him anxious. It sat in him like the shape of his spine. Lily placed her stuffed rabbit in a plastic bin with great ceremony. "He needs to go through the machine so he can be safe too," she informed the TSA agent. The woman smiled. "He will be the safest rabbit here." On the other side of the scanner, Lily watched the bags emerge from the dark tunnel. "What if he likes it in there?" she asked. "Then he has strange taste," Jack said. Their gate was at the end of a long concourse. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out onto the tarmac, where planes taxied and paused. Lily pressed her hands to the glass again. "That one is ours," she asked, pointing at a plane with a blue tail. "Not that one. This one, we will know when they tell us." She frowned as if the lack of certainty offended her. Jack checked the departures board. Flight to Denver on time, gate number matching their passes. There was still nearly an hour before boarding. He settled Lily in a row of chairs and dug out a pack of crayons. She spread her paper on her knees and began a new plane, this one bigger than the last. He watched the way her shoulders rose and fell. Each breath a small, measured act. A deep inhale made a faint whistle in her chest. He nudged her water bottle toward her. She took the hint and drank. Across the country, another alarm was going off. Not the blaring siren kind. Aurora Kane did not tolerate those in her penthouse. Her alarms were discreet. Gentle chimes, notification banners, a soft vibration on the nightstand. The first alert of the morning glowed on the edge of her vision as the blinds slid up, revealing San Francisco, laid out in silver and blue. The bay was still the bridge, a dark line against lighter fog. She rolled out of bed before the second chime. Her body obeyed the habit of early mornings the way soldiers obeyed orders. She padded across heated floors to the kitchen as the espresso machine woke. Her tablet already displayed overnight metrics, Asian markets, server loads, threat reports. Aegis visualizations floated in layered graphs. Her company's logo spun in the corner of the screen, a stylized shield around a mesh of lines that suggested both networks and neural tissue. Kane Systems. No bullets, no bombs, just lines of code and the infrastructure they defended. Aurora scrolled through a summary of simulated attacks that Aegis had neutralized in the night. Phishing campaigns. A coordinated probe against a power grid in Eastern Europe. A botnet behaving in a way that looked almost creative, then failing. She noticed a small hiccup in one of the graphs and bookmarked it. Data that behaved oddly always interested her. Static bothered her less than silence. Her assistant's call broke through the quiet. "Good morning, Ms. Kane," a crisp voice said in her ear. "Quick note about your flight to Denver." "I am listening." "There is a mechanical issue with the forward cabin on the 11:30 out of SFO. The airline can rebook you in first class on the 6 o'clock tomorrow or move you to an extended legroom seat in the main cabin today." Aurora stared at the city a moment. The Falcon Ridge Defense Summit schedule ran through her mind in a series of blocks: panels, private briefings, AGS keynote. "First class is unavailable at all on the earlier flight," she asked. "That is correct. The entire cabin is out of service." Her reflection in the glass raised an eyebrow at her. "I am not losing a day," she said. "Book the seat in main cabin." "Yes, Ms. Kane. They have noted your status and will prioritize boarding. I am emailing the updated pass now." The call ended. She watched a container ship slide slowly across the water. There was a time when the idea of sitting in a crowded section of an aircraft would have been unthinkable. Her parents had trained her to move through the world above impact. Private tutors, private schools, private jets. They had not trained her for shared armrests. At the airport later that morning, she discovered the particular flavor of irritation that came from standing in line behind families who could not find their passports. The terminal at San Francisco International smelled like fried food and expensive perfume. Screens flashed departure cities in an endless loop. Denver blinked on and off above her head. Aurora adjusted the strap of her leather bag and stepped to the side as a boy ran past trailing a stuffed dinosaur. She wore a charcoal suit that looked simple until you paid attention to the stitching. No jewelry except a thin watch and small earrings. Her hair was pulled back with the precision of something engineered, not styled. Her phone buzzed again. A text this time. Boarding group main cabin select. She had frequented flyer status that usually ensured more comfort. Today it only ensured she was one of the first to notice that the people around her had not spent their mornings reading defense briefings. At the gate next to hers, someone argued about a carry-on size. At her gate, a toddler melted down over a dropped lollipop. Aurora kept her face smooth and her jaw loose. She turned her attention to the slides for her keynote rehearsing phrases in her head. When pre-boarding was called, she stepped forward with the people who needed extra time and the people who had paid for a little more space. The gate agent scanned her pass with a bright tone. "Enjoy your flight, Ms. Kane," they said. Enjoy was not the word she would have chosen. The jet bridge air was cooler. Metal underfoot resonated with the weight of rolling bags. Aurora caught a glimpse of the nose of the aircraft as they curved toward the door, white against white sky. Inside the plane, the narrow aisle funneled the line forward. Overhead bins popped open and shut. Voices overlapped in a low, steady hum. She checked the seat map in her memory. Row 14, center seat, not ideal. At least it was front half of the cabin. When she reached the row, she paused. The man in the aisle seat looked up just enough to register her, then went back to settling the small girl against his side. The child's purple dress was a little too big and a little too bright for the worn fabric of the man's flannel shirt. The backpack at his feet had a duct-taped seam. His jeans were clean, but faded to a soft, uncertain blue. A paper boarding pass stuck out of the pocket of his jacket. The girl held a blunt crayon in one hand and the edge of his sleeve in the other. "Excuse me," Aurora said. He shifted out of his seat, careful not to jostle the child, and stepped into the aisle so she could slide into the middle. "Thank you," she said. He nodded once. She took her seat, placed her bag under the chair in front of her, and pulled out her tablet. The screen lit her face in cool light. On the tray table between them, Lily's drawing lay open. A plane with oversized wings soared over triangular mountains. Two stick figures leaned out of windows labels scrawled beside them. "Me, Dad." Aurora noticed the way the man's hand rested near the inhaler on his thigh, fingers closed but not touching. She noticed the tightness at the corners of his eyes, like someone who slept lightly even when exhausted. She also noticed the way the girl leaned into his side, as if that place had been carved for her. The plane filled around them. Overhead bins clicked shut. A flight attendant moved through the aisle, greeting passengers with a smile that held up under repetition. The engine started to whine, a soft vibration at first, then a growing presence underfoot. Lily looked up from her drawing, eyes wide. "Is it starting?" she whispered. "Just the engines," the man said. His voice was low and steady, nothing to worry about. Aurora opened the file labeled Falcon Ridge Keynote. On the screen, AGS diagrams shifted from blue to red and back again. Arrows traced attack vectors and defensive responses. The words predictive confidence glowed near the bottom of a chart. She adjusted the brightness and scrolled through the slides, but a part of her was listening to the small voice on her left and the quiet answers that followed. Outside, the ground rolled past the window, then tilted as the plane lined up with the runway. Jack curled his arm a little more firmly around Lily's shoulders. He felt the device inside his sleeve cold against his skin. As the engine surged and the plane began to move, he closed his eyes for a breath and counted. 1, 2, 3. The plane pressed them back into their seats as it gathered speed. Lily's hand found Jack's and clamped down. Her fingernails dug into his skin. He did not pull away. Out at the oval window, the runway lights blurred into streaks. The engines roared. The cabin rattled just enough to remind everyone that gravity did not enjoy being ignored. Jack watched the tilt of the world as the nose lifted. The ground fell away. The city flattened into a map of streets and roofs and glints of water. For a second, Lily's breath hitched, trapped between fear and awe. Then they were climbing through a layer of cloud. White swallowed everything. The cabin lights glowed warm in the muffled gray. "You are doing good," Jack said quietly. "I feel funny," Lily whispered. "Funny like a roller coaster, or funny like you cannot breathe." "Roller coaster," she said. "That is the good kind of funny." The seatbelt signs stayed on as they reached initial altitude. The flight attendants did their first walk-through, checking for loose straps, raised trays, bags not fully under seats. One paused beside their row and smiled at Lily. "First time flying?" she asked. Lily nodded. "You picked a good day for it," the attendant said. "Nice and smooth." She moved on. Aurora kept her eyes on her tablet, though she had not flipped to the next slide in several minutes. She was aware of the shift in pressure, the way her ears felt full, the subtle ache in her forehead. She looked past Jack at the window. They had broken through the cloud layer. Outside, the world had become an ocean of white. The tops of the clouds were bright and uneven, like someone had crumpled a sheet of paper and left it floating. "It looks like spilled whipped cream," Lily said. Jack turned his head. "That is one way to describe it." "What do you think it looks like?" she asked Aurora. Aurora hesitated. Lily was looking across Jack at her, as if this were a question on a test. "Like snow," Aurora said. "Snow that forgot it was supposed to fall." Lily giggled. "Daddy said that too." "Smart man," Aurora said. Jack did not comment. He was watching the aisle, waiting for the small light above them to flick off so he could let Lily shift into a better position. When the ding sounded and the seatbelt sign went out, he loosened his grip on the armrest and helped Lily curl sideways. She tucked her feet under her and rested her head against his chest. "Tell me a story," she murmured. "About what?" "About the mountains," she said, eyes already half closed. He began to talk, voice low. He described the Rockies as if they were old friends, tall, cragged, patient. He told her about snow that stayed when other snow melted, about trees that clung to impossible slopes, about air that felt thinner and somehow clearer. His words slowed as her breathing lengthened. Soon the only sound from her was the soft whisper of air in and out, the occasional tiny snore when her nose clogged for a second. On his other side, inches away, Aurora scrolled through statistics about cyber attacks and predictive models. The contrast made her jaw tighten. He held a living system that could fail from one bad cold. She held a digital one that claimed it could not fail at all. Time stretched. The cabin settled into that suspended feeling of cruise altitude. A baby cried in the back for a while, then quieted. The smell of reheated food drifted from the galley. Jack looked at his watch. The numbers told him nothing he did not already know. They also told him something else. He flexed his left wrist. The fabric of his sleeve brushed against the device strapped to the inside. Hidden in the pocket he had sewn long ago, it had warmed against his skin, picking up his body heat, existing as weight more than object. He waited until the flight attendant had passed by again, until the cart rattled out of sight, until the man across the aisle closed his eyes and the woman in front of them reclined her seat that extra few inches. Then he slipped his fingers under the cuff. The tiny button was exactly where it had always been. His thumb settled on it like a key finding its lock. He did not need to push it. No one had asked him to. There was no guarantee anything on the other end would even listen. He pushed it anyway. A soft vibration against his skin like a heartbeat out of rhythm. No beep, no light. The device did not demand notice. Outside the airplane, invisible pulses of energy reached far beyond the metal tube and its rows of passengers. The signal spread, then narrowed itself through channels it had once used like familiar streets. It reached for nodes that might no longer exist. Far away, deep under another mountain, an array of receivers still listened for that particular pattern. A console that spent most of its days logging routine communications flickered. A line of text changed color. 17 different systems registered the signature within the same breath. Phantom 1 auth code active. Alarms did not blare. That was not the design. This alert traveled in quiet channels. It jumped from one secure network to another, climbing classified ladders. In a room with no windows, a junior officer paused with his coffee halfway to his mouth as a notification box appeared on his terminal. His supervisor stepped closer, read the label, and set his own mug down with more force than necessary. Someone higher up stopped a meeting to pick up a phone. Outside the aircraft, the sky was a pale, empty blue. It did not stay empty for long. 2 F-22s closed the distance in a clean arc, their approach vectors calculated to account for commercial traffic corridors. They came in behind and below, at first unseen, then slid into position where the passengers would notice them. The first murmurs started on the other side of the cabin. "Are those jets? Look outside, look outside." Phones appeared despite the announcement at the beginning of the flight. Someone pressed their face to the window. The hum of the plane rose as if reacting to the shift in attention. Aurora glanced up, irritated at the noise at first. Then the voice behind her said loudly, "That is the Air Force," and she followed his pointing hand. The F-22 on their side was close enough to see the pilot's helmet behind the reflective canopy. Its gray skin caught the light in flat planes. It held position so perfectly it looked glued to the sky. Lily stirred against Jack's chest. "What is happening?" she mumbled. "Just some company," he said. "You see that?" a man across the aisle said. "We must be someone important." Aurora frowned. This was not in any flight plan she had ever reviewed. A chime sounded overhead. The captain's voice came through the speakers, slightly distorted. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. As you may have noticed, we have been joined by a pair of United States Air Force F-22 Raptors." The excited talking grew louder. "This is not a routine procedure," the captain continued. "We have been informed that this is a special recognition for a distinguished member of our armed forces traveling with us today. There is no cause for concern." The words hung in the air. A distinguished member. No name given. Faces turned, searching. Aurora looked around, curiosity pricking at her. She expected to see a uniform, a dress jacket, some sign. There was none. The man beside her had not moved. His eyes were on the window, but his body remained still, careful of the sleeping child against him. His hand had tightened slightly on her shoulder. He was counting under his breath. She could see his lips moving. 90 seconds, though she did not know that. Long enough for both Raptors to hold formation, their presence a visible acknowledgement. Then, as precisely as they had arrived, the jets peeled away. One tipped its wing in a small arc, the other followed. They angled off and climbed, vanishing back into the higher blue. The cabin filled with the sound of clapping. Someone whistled. People began speculating in low voices. Must be a general. Maybe some kind of medal ceremony. Probably up front, first class. Aurora found herself studying Jack without the polite filter she used for most strangers. His flannel shirt had a missing button near the cuff. The stubble on his jaw was a little too long for office work, but too tidy to be neglect. There were faint white lines on his knuckles, pale scars that spoke of old breaks. His gaze met hers for a heartbeat. "That was unusual," she said. "The Air Force likes to be dramatic," he replied. "You sound like you know." "Everyone knows someone who served," he said. It was an answer that was not an answer. Lily snuffled and shifted. His attention dropped immediately to her face, checking color, checking breath. Aurora recognized the sharp focus. She had seen it in bodyguards and security staff, people whose job was to anticipate harm seconds before it arrived. Only this did not look like a job. The rest of the flight felt slightly off balance, like a conversation that had started but not finished. People kept glancing at the aisle as if someone in camouflage might appear at any moment. When the captain announced their descent into Denver, Jack gently woke Lily. "Look out there," he said as the plane tilted. "You wanted mountains." Clouds fell away to reveal them. They rose in layers, blue and gray and white. The Rockies caught the afternoon light along their ridges. Snow clung to some peaks in bright streaks. There were no buildings near them, nothing tall enough to compete. Lily pressed her forehead to the window. "They are bigger than downtown," she breathed. "Told you," Jack said. Aurora watched her, then let her eyes follow the line of rock out to the horizon. Her world usually existed in glass towers and conference rooms. The raw scale of stone out there made those towers feel smaller. The plane leveled, then lowered again. Suburbs appeared, then roads, then the clear geometry of runways. Touchdown came with a firm bump and the squeal of tires. Reverse thrust pulsed through the cabin. People clapped again, though, for a more ordinary reason now. As they taxied, the jet that had flown alongside was nowhere to be seen. At the gate, the seatbelt sign chimed off. Passengers sprang up to retrieve bags, leaning impatiently into the aisle. The usual choreography of exit began. Jack stayed seated until there was space. Lily's legs were still a little unsteady, so he lifted her easily, setting her on the seat while he pulled down their backpack. Aurora stood adjusting her jacket, sliding her tablet into her bag. She felt the familiar urge to be first off, first into the terminal, first to the waiting car. She managed 2 steps into the aisle before someone spoke to the front of the cabin from outside. The door opened inward again. This time it was not a flight attendant filling the frame. A man in an Air Force uniform stepped in, broad shoulders squared. The rows nearest the front went quiet first. The hush spread back like a wave as more people noticed him. Silver on his shoulders, ribbons in careful rows on his chest. His hair was white at the temples and clipped short. He walked down the aisle with steady, unhurried steps. Aurora's mind ticked through possibilities. A security situation, a diversion, an escort for some high-value passenger she had not seen. The man passed her row without even glancing at her. He stopped at 14. Jack had just swung the backpack into the aisle. Lily's arms were around his neck. "Colonel Mercer," the general said. His voice carried, but it was not loud. "We have been trying to decide whether to believe the reports that you were gone. Looks like we were wrong." Jack straightened slowly. He did not let go of Lily. He turned enough to face the man. "General Hayes," he said. Aurora felt the name like a file opening. Robert Hayes, Strategic Air Command, connected to more programs than most journalists could track. "We never got to say goodbye properly," Hayes said. "Phantom Unit has a long memory." Murmurs rippled through the nearby rows. Someone sucked in a breath. Someone whispered, "Phantom, I thought that was a rumor." Jack's jaw worked once. "I signed the papers," he said. "You got your goodbye." Hayes looked at Lily, then back at him. "We got a story that made certain people comfortable," the general said. "That is not the same thing." Jack's hand tightened slightly on Lily's leg. "This is not the place," he said. His eyes flicked around at the faces turned toward them. "She does not need all of this." Hayes nodded, as if he had expected that answer. "Understood," he said. "There is a car waiting if you want it. No press, no ceremony." "We will take a cab," Jack said. "She likes seeing cities close up." Hayes smiled at Lily, then something softer in his lined face. "You must be Lily," he said. "Your father talked about you more than any operation we ever ran." Lily considered him with grave attention. "He does not talk about the old days much," she said. "He says the best stories are the ones we are in right now." Hayes' eyes shone slightly. He nodded. "He always had a way of saying things that made sense," he said. "You take care of him." "I do," she replied. The aisle behind them had stopped moving. People watched as Hayes stepped back to let them gather their things. His aides, who had stood behind him like shadows, shifted to make room. Jack moved toward the exit with Lily on his hip and the backpack on one shoulder. As he stepped into the jet bridge, he looked up for a second. Aurora was just ahead of him. For a heartbeat, they were close enough to share the same stale air and fluorescent light. "Colonel," she said quietly. "Just Jack," he answered. His voice was calm. The other guy retired. Lily rested her chin on his shoulder. "He did not retire," she told Aurora. "He just wears different clothes now." Aurora looked at the girl, then at Jack, and something in her careful composure shifted. The jet bridge opened into the wide noise of the terminal. The smell of coffee and fuel, and people rolled over them. Jack adjusted his grip on Lily and followed the signs toward baggage claim. Outside, beyond layers of glass and concrete, the mountains waited. The rental cab smelled like old fries and pine cleaner. Lily sat in the back with her knees pulled up, forehead pressed against the cold glass. The city outside the Denver airport gave way to suburbs, then to long stretches of highway. Billboards thinned out, houses scattered. The sky seemed to open wider. "Are we still in Colorado?" she asked. "Still in Colorado," Jack said from the front. The seatbelt cut across his chest, the backpack at his feet. "State is bigger than it looks on maps." "It already looks big on maps," she said. "Then we are in the big part of the big." She thought about that, then went back to cataloging sites. Cow. Another cow. Boring field. Less boring field. Tiny forest, she narrated. The driver chuckled. She is not wrong. As they climbed, the air looked clearer, but felt thinner. Lily's questions came with longer pauses between them. Jack heard the slight change in her breathing, a faint effort where there had been none before. He reached back, hand open without looking. Her small fingers found his and squeezed. "I am okay," she said. "I know," he said. "Tell me if it feels like not okay." The highway turned toward the mountains. The Rockies no longer floated on the horizon. They loomed, dark shoulders topped with snow ridges and gullies like scars. The Falcon Ridge complex sat at the base of a slope, part resort and part something else. The main building had the look of a lodge, all timber and stone, but behind it, concrete structures tucked themselves into the hillside in a way that did not invite casual visitors. The cab dropped them at the front entrance. Warm air rushed out when the doors opened, bringing with it the scent of fireplaces and polished wood. Inside, a tall stone fireplace crackled. A bar buzzed quietly, with conversations in muted tones. Men and women with lanyards and badges clustered around small tables, talking with their heads bent close. Jack could tell even without reading the print on the badges that this was not a tourist conference. The posture gave it away, the way people scanned as they moved. A sign near the reception desk read, Falcon Ridge Defense Strategy Summit. Welcome attendees. General Hayes waited near the desk jacket off, but uniform still unmistakable. He looked more at ease than he had on the plane, but his eyes were sharper. Jack, he said, pushing away from the chair he had been leaning on. You made good time. Cab did most of the work, Jack said. Hayes's gaze slid to Lily. How are you holding up, young lady? Mountains are big, she reported. Air is small. That is one way to put it. Hayes signaled to the receptionist. We have a room for you on the family floor, closest we could get to the medical wing without making it weird. Jack nodded. Thank you. Hayes handed him a slim envelope and a badge. The plastic tag had Jack Mercer printed in black, with a simple label underneath. Consultant. No rank, no unit. The absence more than any line of text. We will keep the official parts light, Hayes said. There are some people here who will be very interested in your brain. We can decide how much of it they get. Depends what they offer in trade, Jack said. Try not to charge me by the thought. Lily tugged on Hayes's sleeve. What is a summit, she asked. A place where people who think they are very smart come to talk about how smart they are, he replied. Do they listen to? She asked. Hayes smiled. The best ones do. Upstairs, the room was small but clean. 2 beds, a window that faced a stand of pines, and a slice of mountain beyond. The air inside was dry. Jack opened the window a crack and listened to the difference in wind sound at this elevation. He set up the nebulizer on the nightstand, as if it were a family member giving it a place and a plug. Lily tested the bed bounce and then sat cross-legged to watch him check and recheck the equipment. You are in your mission mode, she said. I am in my making sure you can breathe mode, he replied. Mission mode, she repeated. He glanced at the time. The keynote in the main hall started soon. Hayes had circled it on the schedule as the place his presence would matter. Think you can handle some grown-up talking, he asked. Is there a screen, she asked. There is always a screen. Then yes. In another wing of the same complex, Aurora stood in front of a mirror, while a stylist fixed a stray strand of hair near her temple. She had not asked for the stylist, but someone on the summit staff had decided keynote speakers looked more official with assistance. She tolerated it for exactly 8 minutes before thanking the woman and sending her away. Her suit had changed from the one she wore on the plane. This one was a deeper blue cut, sharper at the shoulders. The knot of tension she had carried from the flight had smoothed into a focused line. On the desk behind her, her notes glowed on a tablet, bullet points about threat landscapes and attack surfaces, aegis diagrams, phrases she had tested out loud until they landed with the right weight. Her phone buzzed with a heads-up from the organizer. Main hall filling up, she closed her eyes briefly, then opened them again and left the room. The auditorium at Falcon Ridge had the bones of a theater and the nerves of a command center. Rows of seats sloped toward a wide stage. Screens lined the walls. The ceiling hid enough speakers to make a whisper sound like a thought heard inside your own head. Aurora stood behind the curtain, while a general she did not know well introduced her. His words floated through the cloth. Cutting edge, he was saying. Transformative. A system that represents the next phase of our defensive posture in cyberspace. She stepped onto the stage when cued. The lights caught her bright enough that the first row dissolved into shapes rather than faces. Good afternoon, she said. Her voice sounded lower than she expected, but steady. She moved through the opening formalities with practiced ease, letting the rhythm of data and argument guide her. On the main screen behind her, a modeled map of the globe lit up with points of attempted intrusion. Every connection is a door, she said. Every door is a potential entry point. For years, our approach has been reaction. We built better locks, then waited to see who knocked. She tapped her remote. The map shifted. Patterns of movement emerged, color-coded arcs describing behavior. Aegis does not wait, she continued. It observes, learns, and predicts. It recognizes adversarial signatures before they test our perimeters. In the audience, Lily sat nestled against Jack's side, eyes wide. She did not understand most of the words, but the moving colors on the screen held her attention. The air in the hall felt heavier to her. Jack noted the faint flush in her cheeks. He adjusted the small portable oximeter clipped to her finger and watched the numbers, still within tolerances. His shoulders settled a fraction of an inch. Aurora drove her point home with charts, success rates, simulated attack scenarios where Aegis had outmaneuvered human analysts by seconds that mattered. 98.7% predictive accuracy across tested events, she said. In our field, that margin is the difference between a headline and a non-story. Murmurs of approval trickled through the room. Heads nodded. Pens scribbled notes. A few faces were openly skeptical, but she was used to that. When she finished, the applause came quick and loud, not polite, engaged. "Thank you," she said. "I am happy to take questions." Hands went up. She fielded a few easy ones first. "What about integration costs? How does this change existing protocols?" She answered with figures and references, the comfortable language of budgets and implementation timelines. In the middle of the third row, General Hayes watched, giving nothing away. At the back of the hall, Jack lifted his hand. It took a moment for the moderator to notice him. When he did, his gaze flicked to Hayes, who gave a small nod. "Yes, sir," in the back, the moderator said. A microphone moved toward Jack. Lily tugged at his sleeve, curious. Jack stood, badge hanging against his chest. The consultant label looked thin in this room. He took the microphone and spoke without raising his voice much. The hall was wired to carry sound. "Impressive system," he said. "One question. Your models rely on historical adversarial behavior as training data, correct?" Aurora, still on the stage, adjusted her stance slightly. "Yes," she said. "We feed Aegis every instance of hostile activity we can collect. It learns to recognize those patterns and extrapolate." "And if the adversary knows you are doing exactly that?" Jack asked. A few people shifted in their seats. The question settled over the room. Aurora felt a familiar flicker of irritation. She hid it. "Adversaries always adapt once they realize their tactics have been understood," she said. "That is built into the model." "I am not talking about adapting," after Jack said. "I am talking about designing entire campaigns from the beginning with your system in mind, giving it exactly the kind of behavior it wants to learn." He moved a few steps down the aisle as he spoke, not enough to be theatrical, just enough that the distance between them changed. "Suppose I run 6 months of traffic that looks hostile enough to be interesting, but is structurally consistent and always ends in a certain outcome. No actual damage, just noise that fits within your risk tolerance. Your AI drinks that in. It builds an internal picture of what my aggression looks like." Aurora narrowed her eyes. "That is a risk with any learning model, Colonel," Jack Mercer Hayes said from the front, cutting in. His voice carried easily. "Former commander of Phantom Unit." The name Phantom moved through the audience like a current. Aurora took that in, then looked back at Jack. "All right," she said. "Mr. Mercer, what is your concern exactly?" He did not look offended by the shift in title. "You are teaching your system to trust patterns. It has seen the most," he said. "If I control what it sees for long enough, I can teach it to trust the wrong thing. When I finally launch a real attack, it will not look like your training set. Your AI will downrank it because it does not fit what it thinks hostility looks like." He let the idea sit a moment. "In my previous line of work, we called it poisoning the well," he said. "Give the enemy's sensors something so perfectly dramatic that they stop noticing the quiet parts." On the stage, Aurora felt the ground of her confidence shift. Not collapse, but tilt. The scenario he described was not something her team had ignored, but hearing it framed that way from that mouth in that room made it more vivid. "Aegis has anomaly detection baked in," she said. "It flags deviations from expected behavior." "Expected based on past behavior," Jack said. "But if your past is my design, your expectation is my trap." One of the admirals in the front row leaned forward. "You are suggesting the core learning paradigm is vulnerable," he said, "across the board." "I am saying any system that learns from an adversary is by definition susceptible to adversary manipulation," Jack replied. "Her tech is remarkable. It just needs a paranoid friend watching over its shoulder." Aurora's tongue moved faster than her mind for once. "What would that look like?" she asked. "A separate layer," he said. "One that assumes the primary model is compromised. It does not ask what the data says. It asks what the data is trying too hard to say." A murmur of interest rippled through the rows of engineers and analysts. Hayes stood up. "I think that is a conversation for a more secure room," he said. "Ms. Kane, Mr. Mercer, if you are both willing, I would like to continue this downstairs." Aurora glanced at the faces watching her, then at Jack, who had one hand on Lily's shoulder. "I am willing," she said. Jack hesitated for half a second, then nodded. Lily looked up at him. "Are we going under the mountain now?" she whispered. "Looks like it," he answered softly. He handed the microphone back and sat feeling the familiar pull of gravity when old work reached out to claim him again. The elevator hummed quietly as it moved lights above the doors, ticking from lobby to 1, then skipping numbers until only a red B glowed. Lily squeezed Jack's hand. "Feels like going to the Batcave," she said. "Less bats," Jack replied. "More computers." "I like bats," she said. "They are like mice that learn to be better." The elevator slowed. Before the doors opened, they felt the change in air. Cooler, drier, a faint tang of metal and recycled oxygen. When the doors slid apart, a woman in a simple navy dress and sensible shoes waited with General Hayes. Her hair was silver and tied back. There was flour on one sleeve, as if she had left a kitchen in a hurry. "Jack, this is Margaret," Hayes said. His voice softened. "My better half." Margaret gave Jack a nod, then bent a little to meet Lily's eyes. "And you must be Lily," she said. "I heard you like dogs and dislike boring grown-up meetings." "I like some boring meetings," Lily said, "if there are screens." Margaret smiled. "We have screens upstairs, and dogs in the yard, and cookies that just came out of the oven. You think you can help me decide which dog gets which treat?" Lily glanced at Jack for confirmation. "It is okay," he said. "You go with Mrs. Hayes. Stay where she can see you. Use your inhaler if you need it." "I know," Lily said. She slipped her hand into Margaret's with the easy trust she reserved for people Jack did not worry about. The two of them walked toward another elevator, Hayes watching until the doors closed behind them. "Thank you," Jack said. "You can give her back by dinner," Hayes replied. Then his focus shifted. "This way." They walked down a corridor lined with doors that had no labels, only keypads and card readers. The walls were a gray that was neither warm nor cold. The floor did not squeak or echo. Halfway down, Hayes stopped at a door with a heavier frame than the others. He scanned his badge, then his palm. The lock clicked. "After you," he said to Aurora. The room beyond was larger than Jack expected, though his expectations had adjusted in places like this before. Rows of workstations faced a curved wall of screens. In the center, a cluster of desks formed a loose circle, wires like vines connecting them all. Aurora's team was already there. Some stood, some sat hunched over keyboards. A few had the wild-eyed look of people who had slept in shifts around a problem. On the main screen, a visual representation of edges pulsed in lines and nodes. Another screen held what looked like its twin, though the colors were different. Ms. Kane, one of the engineers, said relief and tension colliding in his tone. "We integrated the secondary model like we discussed. It is functional, but it is not contradicting the primary. It is just echoing it with slightly different confidence values." Aurora walked to the center station, her heels muted on the floor. "This is the doubt layer," she said to Jack, gesturing at the second representation. "An independent model trained to question the first." "Question it how?" Jack asked. "A different architecture, less weight on outcome match, more on anomaly," the engineer replied. Jack watched the screen a moment. Data flowed through in simulated bursts labeled with timestamps and origin codes. Both models responded with charts and numbers. "They are both learning from the same data," he asked. "For now, yes. We copied the training set and branched," the engineer said. "So you built a twin and told it to be suspicious," Jack said. Aurora folded her arms. "You think that is not enough? If they grew up on the same stories," Jack said, "they will have the same blind spots." He stepped closer to the screen, eyes scanning the log of simulated events. "Run a replay of that Eastern Grid attack," he said. "The one from your case study." The engineer glanced at Aurora. She gave a short nod. Fingers moved across keys. One of the wall screens shifted to show a stylized map of a power network, lines lighting up in a pattern. Event markers ticked up on the side. Aegis flagged the intrusion at a certain point, then stepped through the countermeasures. On the next monitor, the doubt model traced the same curve almost exactly. Only the shade of blue on its graph was different. "See," the engineer said, "no divergence." Jack rubbed his jaw. "You are teaching them to doubt the data," he said slowly, "not the rules you use to read the data." "That is the point," Aurora said. "We cannot have a model that doubts the entire framework. It would never decide anything." "Maybe it should not trust certainty so easily," he said. She watched him for a beat. "What did you do in Phantom when you suspected your own intel was compromised?" she asked. "We assumed it was," he said, "and looked for something that did not match the story we liked best." He turned back to the screens. "Right now, both of your models like the same story," he said. "You need one that gets nervous when things look too clean." An engineer with a beard and a mug that read "Code or Die" frowned. "Too clean, how?" he asked. "Noise reduction is half the game." "Reality is messy," Jack said. "People forget things. They get tired. They make mistakes. Communication patterns wobble. When an enemy feeds you 6 months of traffic without a single human flaw in it, you should feel itchy." He rested his hand on the back of a chair and leaned in. "We ran something once," he said. "Different theater, different religion. The target used radio comms heavily. We wanted to see if their machine was learning us, so we gave it a schoolbook version of our behavior." He looked at Aurora. Every contact was exactly on schedule, he said. Perfect phrasing, perfect handoff, no clipped words, no overlap. If you zoomed out, it made a beautiful pattern. "What did you watch for?" Aurora asked. "We watched for the thing they forgot to fake," he said. "Prayer times." The room quieted. A server hummed faintly. The air system sighed. 5 times a day, Jack said. Most of their operators were devout. In their real traffic you saw little gaps. A call delayed here, a message shorter there, because bodies were in a mosque, not at a radio. In the fake set, the machine pushed through without blinking. No dips, no gaps. The pattern was too smooth. He straightened. "So we wrote a little script that asked a simple question," he said. "Where are the absences that should be there and are not?" "The absence of the absence," the bearded engineer murmured. "Something like that," Jack said. Aurora moved to the nearest terminal. "Can we give the secondary model a new objective function?" she asked her team. "Not just anomaly, but polishing detection. Flag sequences where variance falls below a certain human threshold." "That is vague," one of them said. "Start with signal entropy," she replied. "If the pattern smooths out beyond what real systems display over long periods, I want it marked. Cross-reference with any known human routines in the region." "You will get a lot of noise," he warned. "We can tune," she said. The bearded engineer's fingers were already flying. "We can also seed it with some of your phantom data, if any of that is cleared," he said. "It is not," Hayes said from his seat by the door. Jack gave a small half-smile. "We can fake our own fakes," he said. "Build a set of traffic that is deliberately perfect, and see if the model learns to call us out on it." Aurora nodded once. "Do it," she said. They worked in a tight cluster around the central station. Lines of code filled the screens. Words like entropy and variance and noise threshold appeared and disappeared in rapid succession. Jack did not touch the keyboard. He watched. Occasionally he pointed at a line. "If you teach it that every spike is bad," he said, "you are too broad. It has to learn that some spikes mean late trains and some spikes mean explosions." "You are very picky for someone not doing the typing," the engineer muttered, not unkindly. Jack shrugged. "You invited me to be paranoid," he said. Aurora moved around the room, checking each station. Where a normal executive might hover, she engaged. A correction here, a suggestion there. Her mind mapped structures while theirs handled syntax. Finally, the bearded engineer leaned back. "All right," he said. "Secondary model has a subroutine that monitors pattern smoothness over time and correlates it with expected human irregularity, given a few basic assumptions about whoever lives on the other end." "Run the old grid attack first," Aurora said. The map reappeared on the main screen. The Aegis primary model traced its familiar path. The doubt layer stayed mostly quiet. A few minor warnings, no major flags. "Now feed it something synthetic," Jack said. "Make it beautiful." They did. The second simulation showed a flurry of hostile pings and responses, each one exactly within parameters. No late packets, no dropped signals, no jitter. To the primary Aegis model, it looked like a textbook case. It flagged the attack's suggested countermeasures and ended with a satisfied, neutralized label. On the secondary display, something changed. A thin red line appeared on the edge of the graph. "Talk to me," Aurora said. The engineer called up the explanatory panel. "Doubt model reports low entropy over a prolonged period compared to expected human traffic," he said. "Summary pattern too consistent to be organic. High probability of deliberate curation." Translated, Jack said it thinks it is being fed. A slow smile touched Aurora's mouth. Not the polite kind she used on panels. Something smaller, almost private. "Good," she said. The bearded engineer clicked a few more keys. "We can test against real logs too," he said. "See how often it barks at legitimate data." "It will bark at some," Jack said. "That is the point. You want something in the room that complains when everyone else is nodding." Behind him, Hayes chuckled quietly. "In all the briefings I went through about Phantom," he said, "no one mentioned you had a poetic streak." Jack ignored that. "One more thing," he said to Aurora. "You need to be careful about how sure you sound when you talk about this in rooms like the one upstairs." "You think I sounded too sure," she said. "I think machines that are too sure are dangerous," he said. "Same goes for the people who build them." For a heartbeat, they simply looked at each other. Screens glowed around them in cool colors. The hum of servers made a low chorus. Aurora broke the line of sight first. "Noted," she said. Above them, beyond concrete and rock, the summit continued. People argued, drank coffee, checked their phones. Down here in the quiet belly of the mountain, a new layer of skepticism had taken its first breath. By the time they came up from the lab, the mountain had changed color. Late afternoon light leaned in through the lobby windows, turning the stone fireplace gold. The air smelled like wood smoke and coffee. People from the summit milled around with drinks in hand, badges swaying on lanyards. Lily barreled into Jack before he had cleared the last stair. "Daddy," she said, breathy with excitement, "they have 2 dogs and one of them snores louder than you." Margaret Hayes followed at a slower pace, a smudge of flour on her cheek and a satisfied look in her eyes. She supervised cookie distribution, Margaret said. It was a very serious mission. Lily opened her palm. A few crumbs clung to her skin. She licked one off with exaggerated care. "I had to taste test," she said, "for safety." Jack rested a hand on her head, feeling the warmth there. "Breathing?" he asked quietly. She nodded. "Good. Just thin air, but I told it who was boss." Margaret looked toward Aurora, who had paused a few steps behind Jack. "You must be Ms. Kane," Margaret said. "Thank you for keeping my husband occupied with something that is not golf." Aurora smiled, the expression easing her face. "He is good at keeping people occupied, too." Hayes clapped Jack on the shoulder. "You two did something important down there," he said. "You should eat something that is not vending machine food." "That is actually why I came back up," Aurora said. She shifted her bag on her shoulder. "I wanted to thank both of you." She looked at Jack. "I owe you dinner, at least." Lily gasped softly. "Restaurant dinner?" Jack glanced at his daughter. Her cheeks were pink crumbs on her shirt, eyes bright. "You have cookies in you already," he said. "There is always room for mac and cheese," she answered. Aurora hesitated. "I know a place in town," she said. "It is not far. They do grown-up food and the kind with too much cheese. If you are up for it." Jack studied her face for a beat. There was intent there and something else. Not pity. Curiosity, maybe. He looked down at Lily. "You think you can handle a little car ride?" "If there is food at the end," she said yes. He turned back to Aurora. "All right," he said. "Dinner." Hayes handed him a key fob. "Take my car," Hayes said. "The summit will not collapse without it." Margaret squeezed Lily's shoulder. "Bring her back before she turns into a pumpkin," she said. "She already turned into a stomach," Lily protested. "The rest is fine." The car Hayes loaned them was an unflashy SUV, clean, with a faint smell of leather and coffee. The dashboard lights glowed a soft blue when Jack started the engine. Aurora sat in the front passenger seat, her bag at her feet. Lily took the back strapped carefully in, inhaler tucked in the pocket of her dress. The road into town followed the curve of the mountain, then dropped into a valley where lights were just beginning to flicker on. Jack drove with the easy caution of someone who had spent time in worse terrain. "You always volunteer other people's cars?" he asked Hayes in his head, but the general was not there to answer. Aurora watched the pine trees slide past, then the clusters of houses. "I did not expect to see you again after the plane," she said. "Same plane, same destination," Jack said. "The world is not that big." "It feels big when you are 10,000 feet up," she said. "In here it is 1 aisle wide," he replied. "It's so multiplied." She considered that for a moment, then turned her gaze forward again. The restaurant sat on a corner in the small downtown brick, on the outside amber light showing through big front windows. The sign over the door simply said, "Marlowe's." Inside, the smell of butter and garlic wrapped around them right away. Low music played under the murmur of conversations. Tables were close enough to feel company, far enough not to feel crowded. The hostess looked at Lily first, then at the adults. "3?" she asked. "Yes," Aurora said. "Somewhere with space for coloring." The hostess smiled and led them to a corner booth. Lily slid in beside Jack, leaving Aurora on the other side of the table. Menus appeared. One had a cartoon dragon on the front. Lily opened hers and scanned the options. "Mac and cheese," she announced, as if confirming the existence of gravity, "and maybe also fries, for scientific comparison." "Water for her," Jack told the server. "No ice. And she has an inhaler if she starts to cough. Just ignore it, unless she looks scared." The server nodded, not thrown. This town had probably seen its share of medical tourism. "And for you," the server asked Jack. "Burger. Medium. Whatever is the least fancy." Aurora handed over her menu last. "I will have the grilled salmon," she said, "and the truffle mac and cheese. For the table." Lily's eyes widened. "There is mac and cheese with truffles." "Little mushrooms," Aurora said, "not the pig kind." "Do pigs have their own kind?" Lily asked. "They do in cartoons," Aurora replied. When the server left, the booth felt smaller in a good way. The wood was warm under Jack's hand. The clink of glasses and low conversation created a sort of blanket around their little island. Lily studied Aurora with a directness that made adults slightly nervous. "You look different than on the plane," Lily said. "How so?" Aurora asked. Less mad, Lily said. Jack coughed once into his napkin. Aurora tilted her head. I was not mad, she said. Maybe a little annoyed. At what Lily asked? Being downgraded, Aurora said. I do not like surprises when I am supposed to be in control. Daddy says planes do not care who you are, Lily said. They just fly or not. Aurora smiled. Your father is very quotable. He does not like when I quote him, Lily said. I understand that, Aurora said. The drinks arrived, water for Lily, soda for Jack, something with lime and no alcohol for Aurora. She held the glass in both hands for a moment as if grounding herself. You run all of that downstairs, Jack said. Up here they do not even know your name. That is not entirely true, she said. The bartender does. He pretends not to, but he reads defense magazines. Fame, Jack said. Must be exhausting. It is mostly emails, she said. Lily sipped her water and watched them. Do you have kids? She asked Aurora. The question landed like a small stone dropped into a still pond. Aurora blinked. No, she said, I do not. Do you not like them? Lily asked. I like some, Aurora said. I am not sure I would be very good at having one. Lily frowned. You just have to make sure they can breathe and eat, she said. And you listen when they talk, even if you do not know what they are talking about. That sounds like more than two things, Aurora said. It is the same thing, Lily said. It is just care. Jack watched Aurora's face. One corner of her mouth twitched, not quite a smile, not quite pain. When I was 6, Aurora said slowly, my parents put me in a school 5 states away. They said it was the best place for me to learn how to be important. She traced the rim of her glass with her thumb. They visited 3 times, she said, in 7 years. Lily's eyes widened. Did you do something bad? I did not, Aurora said. I did everything right. That was the point. So why did they not come? Lily asked. Because in their heads, their job was to build something impressive, not to be there, Aurora said. They thought love could be outsourced. Lily sat with that for a while. That is dumb, she said finally. Jack almost choked on his soda. Aurora let out a sound that might have been a laugh. Yes, she said, it was. The food arrived in a small parade. Burgers, steaming fries, crisp. A bubbling dish of mac and cheese that smelled like butter and something earthier. Salmon glistening on a bed of greens. Lily inhaled deeply. This is ridiculous, she declared. Eat slowly, Jack said. You need to be able to breathe after. I can breathe while I eat, she said. I am multitasking. Aurora watched the way Jack cut the burger in half without thinking, sliding a piece onto Lily's plate in case she wanted to try. The way his hand hovered near her glass whenever she coughed, not rushing, just ready. You do everything like that, Aurora said, like what he asked. Like it matters if you get it wrong. He took a bite of burger, chewed, swallowed. Does not it, he asked. Not everything, she said. In my experience, you never know which thing will turn out to be the one that mattered, he said. For a stretch, the only sounds were cutlery and quiet satisfaction. Lily tried the truffle mac and cheese, then leaned toward Aurora. Your hair looks like the Ice Queen from the movie, she said, but like if she did not want to freeze anybody. Aurora reached up, fingers brushing the smooth twist at the back of her head. That is a very kind observation, she said. Daddy says it probably costs more than our rent, Lily added. Jack closed his eyes briefly. I did not say it like that, he said. Yes, you did, Lily said, but you whispered. Aurora laughed for real, then the sound surprising even herself. He is not entirely wrong, she said. There is a lot of maintenance involved. Why? Lily asked. It looks fine. You could just wake up like that. That would be a miracle, Aurora said. My hair in the morning looks like it lost a fight with gravity. Lily grinned. The conversation moved in little jumps. Favorite cartoons, worst airport experiences, the kind of questions children asked when they still believed every adult could answer anything. At some point, Lily's energy dipped. Her fork moved slower. Her sentences had longer gaps. Jack reached for the small inhaler on the table and handed it to her without comment. She took 2 controlled breaths from it, as practiced as tying her shoes, then drank water and leaned back. How bad is it? Aurora asked quietly, once Lily was focused on tracing patterns in the condensation on her glass. Jack did not pretend not to understand. Her lungs are losing capacity, he said. His tone stayed even, slow and steady. Some days are better. Altitude makes it worse. Infections are the real danger. And the treatment in Denver, she asked. Experimental, he said. They think it might slow the damage, maybe even repair some. It is priced like magic and labeled like a gamble. You cannot afford it, she said. Not without selling organs, he said. And nobody is buying what I have left. She watched him. There was no drama in his voice, no plea, just arithmetic. You walked away from a career to protect operations and people who blamed you afterward, she said. You swallowed it. Now you are working day jobs and patching boots and still somehow teaching my flagship system how to be suspicious. Something like that, he said. You know I could cover her treatments, Aurora said. Personally, if necessary. I know, he said. That is not the problem. What is the problem, she asked. If you fix this outright, she watches me say, thank you, he said. If I earn something, she watches me work. I am trying to raise her to believe in effort, not luck. Is it luck? Aurora asked if your work built the thing I am now paying you to improve. He fell quiet at that. I sent you that contract, she said. The term sheet is generous because your value is not a favor. It is overdue recognition. He met her eyes, one hand flat on the table. I have read it, he said. And she asked. And I have conditions, he said, which we can talk about when my daughter is not melting into the booth. They both looked at Lily. She had slid sideways, head resting against the back cushion, eyelids heavy. Chocolate cream from dessert dotted her lip. You tired, Bug? Jack asked. A little, she said. My blood is busy with the mac and cheese. Aurora reached for a napkin without thinking and wiped the smear from Lily's chin. Lily blinked at her. You are good at that, Lily said. I had practice on my own face, Aurora said. Jack signaled for the check. Aurora reached for her wallet at the same time he did. He shook his head. You invited, he said. You pay. That is not how it usually works, she said. I am not usually the kind of man someone like you invites to dinner, he said. She studied him a moment, then gave a small nod and set her card down. Outside, the night had settled in. The air was cold enough to bite. Stars showed faintly above the glow of town. Lily walked out between them, one hand in each of theirs, scarf pulled up over her mouth. Her breaths hung for a second in the light from the restaurant window before fading into the dark. The contract arrived 2 days after they returned to Baltimore. It came in a thick envelope that did not match the rest of the mail. No past due stamp, no glossy advertisement, just his name printed cleanly and a small, discreet logo in the corner. Kane Systems. Jack turned it over in his hands once before opening it at the kitchen table. Lily sat across from him, drawing clouds that looked like blobs and labeling them anyway. Inside, the paper was heavier than it needed to be. There were multiple pages clipped together and a shorter letter on top in handwriting that did not belong to any assistant. Jack, this is not charity. This is overdue interest on value the world miscalculated. Consider this a starting point. Aurora. He set the note aside and read the first page, then the second. Senior Strategic Advisor, Systems Integrity, and Adversarial Modeling. Salary figures that made his old military pay look like a typo. Health coverage that had entire sections about dependent care specialist access and out-of-state treatment. A subsection describing a new research initiative in medical device innovation that would sit under the Kane Systems umbrella. He felt Lily's gaze on him before she spoke. Is that homework? She asked. Sort of, he said. Big homework, she said. You are squinting. He folded the top page down just enough that she could see the logo. It is from Ms. Kane, he said. Her face brightened. I like her, she said. She has serious shoes. That is a strange thing to notice, he said. They sound different, Lily said, like she knows where she is going before she goes there. He thought about the way Aurora had moved through the lab, through the restaurant, through the summit, each step as measured as a line of code. She thinks she does, he said. Lily pointed at the stack. Is she asking you to do a thing? She said. She is, he said. She wants me to work for her. Will you? Lily asked. He did not answer right away. He read another paragraph instead. This one described travel expectations, security levels, relocation options. Does it help me breathe? She asked. There was no accusation in her voice, just a simple filter. Yes, he said, it would. Then you should, she said. But you can say no if you do not like it. That is a rule. Ms. Alvarez says grown-ups can say no to jobs they just forget. He smiled, a small thing. Maybe I will say yes, but, he said. That is like a sideways no, she said. Something like that, he said. He reread the medical section. It was not just coverage, it was commitment. Language about underwriting experimental treatment costs through a combination of corporate plan and a new internal fund. The idea of someone else using company money on his daughter's lungs made his shoulders tense and loosen both at once. You are making your thinking face, Lily said. I am going to draw while you think. He let her. The next day he was on a plane again, this time alone. Ms. Alvarez stayed with Lily, armed with a list of medication times and numbers to call that Jack had written out twice. San Francisco greeted him with cold light and the smell of salt. The Kane Systems headquarters rose near the water glass and steel in clean lines. The logo he had seen on paper now stretched across a lobby wall in brushed metal. At the reception desk, his name was already in the system. Ms. Kane will meet you on 16, the receptionist said. The elevator that took him up was smoother than the one under the mountain, quieter, but something about the movement felt familiar. Controlled ascent. Aurora waited at the end of a short hallway lined with framed patents and satellite images. Her suit today was softer still, precise but less armored. She held no tablet, no phone, her hands were empty. "Jack," she said, "thank you for coming. Your email suggested it was worth the trip," he said. "I hope it is," she said. They went into a conference room with a view of the bay. The table was too big for two people, but the chairs were comfortable and the light was good. A folder with a copy of the contract lay at one end. He sat. She sat opposite, not at the head. "You read it," she said. "I did," he said. "And it is generous," he said. "Because it reflects what you bring," she said. "Or because you are used to winning bidding wars," he said. Her mouth twitched. "Both can be true," she said. "You said you had conditions." "I do," he said. He rested his hands on the table, palms down. "First," he said, "I stay off press. No announcements with my name. No ghost of phantom paraded for shareholders. Internally, call me whatever you like. Externally, I am nobody." "Done," she said without pause. "We can list the role without the name. The people who need to know will." "Second," he said, "Lily comes before everything. If she needs me, I walk out of whatever room I am in. No penalties, no performance review language about commitment." "Agreed," she said. "We will put it in writing. We can also set her up with a primary care team here and in Denver, so there is continuity." "Third," he said, "I want access to your lab resources off hours. The medical side, prototype tools, data analytics. I am not a doctor, but I know how to push systems. I want to push at what is hurting her." Aurora leaned back slightly. "You want to build your own fix," she said. "I want to understand what people tell me is impossible," he said. She looked out at the water for a second, then back at him. "I was going to suggest something similar," she said. "We created a medical technology division on paper this week. It needs a head. Someone who can think like an adversary, but this time the enemy is bad code in a human body." "Not what I asked," he said. "It is what you deserve," she said. He shook his head once. "I am not chasing titles anymore," he said. "I am chasing time." "Titles are just keys to certain rooms," she said. "You want all the rooms that might help her. Let me hand you the keys." Silence sat between them for a moment. It was not uncomfortable, just full. "You said you had more," she said quietly. He hesitated, then nodded. "One more," he said. "It is non-negotiable." "All right," she said. "Once a week," he said, "you have dinner with us." She blinked. "That is the condition," she asked. "You spend most of your time in rooms where the air is data," he said. "Lily needs to see that strong women exist outside of presentations. And you look like you could use a meal that is not catered." A small line appeared between her brows. "You are asking for my time," she said. "I am asking for your presence," he said. "You can bring your own forks if it helps." Something flickered in her eyes. It might have been amusement or something softer. "I have forks," she said. "I do not have many weekly commitments that are not quarterly reports." "Now you would have one," he said. She looked down at her folded hands, then back at him. "Yes," she said, "I will do that." He exhaled slowly, as if he had not been sure she would agree until that moment. "Then I accept," he said. "Good," she said. "We will make the edits and send you the final version. HR will want 1,000 signatures and a blood type. Ignore the dramatics. The core will remain." "You always this direct?" he asked. "Only with people who can take it," she said. He stood feeling the weight of the decision settle in his chest like something that fit. On his way out, he passed a glass wall that looked into an open-plan workspace. Screens glowed. People leaned over code. Someone laughed at a joke Jack could not hear. In a corner, a whiteboard had a crude drawing of a shield and a smiley face, and the word Aegis inside. He wondered what Lily would make of it. Weeks gained shape after that. Jack signed the contract. Paper again, then a digital copy that pinged his email. Kane Systems flew a team out to Baltimore to help with logistics, though he declined most offers. "We are fine packing our own lives," he said. They found an apartment closer to a major hospital, with better air filters and windows that sealed properly. The furniture stayed simple. The nebulizer still had a place of honor on the nightstand. Lily's drawings went up on new walls. He split his time between remote work and trips to San Francisco, then Denver, then back. The lab access he had asked for turned into late nights staring at cross-sections of lung tissue on screens, talking with researchers who were equal parts hopeful and cautious. Once a week without fail, there was dinner. The first one was at their kitchen table, same thrift store Wood New City outside the window. Jack cooked, pasta with jar sauce, a salad that was mostly lettuce. Aurora arrived on time, not a minute early, not a minute late, holding a tub of ice cream with a brand Lily recognized from commercials. "You brought the good stuff," Lily said. "I asked my assistant what the good stuff is," Aurora said. "She said this one." "You have an assistant for ice cream?" Lily asked. "I have an assistant for almost everything," Aurora said. "It is very inefficient. I am trying to learn to do some things myself." "You can start with scooping," Jack said, taking her coat. Over the following weeks, the dinners shifted location and menu. Sometimes they cooked in, sometimes they tried a small place down the street where the owner began to greet them by name. Sometimes Aurora ordered takeout from 3 different restaurants because she could not decide what Lily might feel like eating. The triangle at the table stayed the same. Lily in one seat, knees swinging, talking about school assignments and cartoons and the dogs at the Hayes house when they visited Colorado again. Jack in another, asking questions, filling in gaps, washing dishes after. Aurora in the third, learning how to pass the salad bowl without checking her email. She did not always succeed. Once halfway through a story, Lily was telling about a misunderstanding in science class. Aurora's hand twitched toward her phone. She caught herself, fingers hovering just above the device, then pulled back and folded them in her lap. "Sorry," she said. "It buzzed," Lily said. "Is it work?" "It is always work," Aurora said. "But it can wait." Lily seemed to accept that. Jack did not miss the choice. He noticed other small things. Aurora was less precise about her hair on these nights. A strand would escape and she would tuck it back absent-mindedly. Her laugh came quicker. She asked Lily to show her how to draw clouds and ended up with a page full of shapes that looked more like strange islands, but Lily declared them acceptable. One evening, Lily fell asleep on the couch while the adults were still at the table. The TV flickered silently. An empty mug sat on the coffee table ring of cocoa at the bottom. Aurora watched her for a moment. "She looks lighter here than she did at the summit," she said. "Less altitude," Jack said. "Less pressure." "Assume." "I meant on her face," Aurora said. Jack leaned back in his chair. "Here she is not an interesting case or a data point in a trial," he said. "She is just a kid who complains about homework and forgets where she left her socks." "That sounds nice," Aurora said. "You sound surprised," he said. "I am trying to imagine being just a kid," she said. "I do not have that file." He studied her profile. "You have time to create a new one," he said. She did not answer, not right away. "What about you?" she said finally. "Do you ever get to be just a person instead of some legend under a mountain? I am pretty sure legends do not spend this much time unclogging nebulizers," he said. She smiled, then grew serious again. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "The old work." "Sometimes," he said. "The clarity. The sense that what you did mattered on a scale you could not see. But the cost is high, and it is paid in pieces you do not get back." He looked toward the couch where Lily had curled into herself, hand tucked under her cheek. "Now my scale is pretty simple," he said. "One person, one set of lungs." Aurora followed his gaze. Her expression softened in a way that had nothing to do with professional interest. "She is lucky," she said. "I am the one who got lucky," he said. The words hung between them, gentle and true. Outside, the city noise hummed, a different kind of static than he had grown used to in underground rooms and on secure channels. In here, the air smelled like dish soap and leftover garlic bread. The table had a water ring no one bothered to wipe up right away. It felt to all 3 of them like something that could hold. Spring arrived quietly, more on paper than in the air. Jack noticed it first in the dates on his lab reports. The numbers rolled forward. February became March, then April. In the real world, outside the hospital and the office trees fussed with new leaves, and people complained about allergies. Inside conference rooms and clinic halls, the seasons blurred into test cycles. The Kane Systems Medical Division took shape in practical ways. It got a floor plan, a budget, a handful of hires who had never heard of Phantom Unit and only half understood what Aegis did. They knew lungs, though. They knew oxygen saturation curves and tissue response, and the strange, beautiful way alveoli unfolded like microscopic parachutes. Jack fit into the space strangely well. His desk had 2 monitors. One usually showed code, the other imaging. CT slices of lungs scrolled past like ghostly topographies. He learned the language of pulmonologists and biomedical engineers. They learned what it meant when he said things like, "Assume the adversary lies." The first time someone called their new prototype a respiratory assist module, Lily wrinkled her nose. "That sounds like a robot that tells you jokes while you cough," she said. "What would you call it?" Aurora asked her. They were in a meeting room. Lily perched on a chair too big for her, swinging her legs, watching an early mock-up on the table. The device looked like a cross between a small external battery and a sleek medical gadget with soft tubing coiled beside it. "Breather," Lily said. "Just breather, like a friend." Jack wrote breather at the top of the whiteboard in thick marker. No one in the room argued. Development was slow. They tested materials for the cannula sensors for flow algorithms to match pressure to a patient's own attempts. The goal was not to replace lungs. It was to give them a lighter load to carry. They used anonymized data sets at first. Then they asked for volunteers among patients already in various treatment programs. Then the name Mercer started to appear more often in internal designs and scheduling notes. At the Denver clinic, a nurse looped pale tubing gently over Lily's ears and under her chin. "You look like a pilot," the nurse said, making light of the harness. Lily felt along the line where the nasal prongs rested. "Feels like a little mustache," she said. Jack sat nearby, pretending the chair was comfortable. Aurora stood beside him, pretending she was not calculating the odds of success, based on nothing more than the steadiness of Lily's hands. Monitors glowed. A respiratory therapist checked and rechecked values on the breather's small screen. "Ready?" she asked. Lily held up 2 thumbs, then realized that made her hands shake, and dropped them. "Yes," she said. The therapist nodded and tapped the start control. The device murmured to life. A soft pressure met Lily's next inhalation, as if the air had decided to help. Her chest rose. The numbers on the screen flickered, then climbed. 88, 90, 92. Jack watched the curve. He knew better than to read too much into one test. He had told himself that every day of the last 3 weeks. Still, his fingers tensed on his knees. "How does it feel?" Aurora asked. "Funny," Lily said. "Like the air is not working so hard." Jack exhaled. "That is kind of the point," he said. The therapist moved through her checklist stage by stage. She asked Lily to walk slowly around the room, tubes dangling. She watched the graphs and the girl in equal measure. "It is promising," she told them afterward. "We will need weeks of data, and it is not magic, but it might give her more room to maneuver." "More room is good," Jack said. "Is it weird," Lily asked, "that I can feel numbers?" "Not weird," Aurora said, "just rare." They left the clinic under a sky that seemed too big. Lily held Jack's hand and stared up at a single thin cloud that had wandered away from its peers. "If I have breather," she said, "does that mean my lungs can take a nap sometimes?" "Short ones," Jack said. She nodded as if this was a negotiated truce. The device did not fix everything. Some evenings Lily breathed easier, laughed louder, bounced down hallways. Other days, even with assistance, she moved like air weighed more. One night in early summer, Jack woke to a sound his body recognized before his mind did. Cough hard and wet, a gasp that dragged. He was out of bed before he knew he had moved, crossing the dark hallway, heart already beating ahead of events he could not see. In Lily's room, the nightlight cast a weak halo. Lily sat upright, hands clawed at the sheet, eyes wide. Her breaths came in high, tight pulls. Each one sounded like it scraped. He went to his knees beside her bed, reaching for the inhaler, for the nebulizer, for the oximeter all at once. His motions had a practiced order, but fear made them sharper. "In through your nose," he said softly. "Slow, try." "It will not go," she managed. He cupped the inhaler to her mouth, counted the seconds, listened for a shift. The numbers on the oximeter slid downward. 92, 89, 85. The room narrowed. His field of attention shrank to the space between Lily's ribs. He had been under fire before. He had listened to artillery land too close, felt the building he was in shudder with impact. None of that had been like this. Her eyes met his, shiny with alarm. "I know," he said. "We are going." He called the emergency number with one hand and started the nebulizer with the other. The operator's questions came in steady, scripted tones. Address, symptoms, age. By the time the paramedics carried Lily down the stairs, mist still curling from the mask over her face, the breather hung from its strap like a small, silent companion. Jack rode in the front of the ambulance, knuckles white on his knees, hearing every hitch in the breaths that were not his own. At the hospital, fluorescent lights flattened everything. Nurses moved with brisk purpose. Monitors beeped. A doctor with tired eyes and efficient hands took in Lily's chart and the device information at a glance. "Acute exacerbation, probably infection on top of current condition," she said. "We will stabilize her. You did the right thing bringing her in." The words did not comfort. They landed somewhere behind the storm in his chest. Hours blurred. A clear mask replaced the smaller one. IVs found veins. Numbers edged back up slowly, like someone hauling a line out of deep water. At some point, Aurora appeared in the doorway. She had been on a different coast that evening. Her flight had not landed here. Her day had involved a board meeting and a frustrating call with European regulators. None of that explained how quickly she stood now under the hospital's flickering light. Jack blinked at her, momentarily disoriented. "How did you get here?" he asked. "I was in the air when you texted," she said. "Changed my connection. Filed the necessary complaints." She stepped closer to the side of the bed, careful not to brush any of the lines. "How is she asked. "Better than an hour ago," he said. His voice grated in his throat. Lily's lashes fluttered. She murmured something that was mostly air. Aurora leaned down. "It is me," she said softly. "You scared your father." "Scared breather too," Lily whispered, barely audible. Aurora smiled a tired, small curve. "It will forgive you," she said. They stood in silence, listening to the rhythmic hiss and exhale of the machine. Sometime near dawn, when Lily finally slept in a way that was more rest than collapse, Jack stepped out into the hallway. The hospital smell followed him. Antiseptic coffee, recycled air. He ran a hand over his face, feeling days of tension in the bones. Aurora joined him, leaning against the wall. "You do not have to be here," he said. "I could say the same about you," she said. He looked at her. Her hair had escaped its tie entirely. Dark circles marked the skin under her eyes. There was a coffee stain on the cuff of her blouse. "I hate probabilities," she said quietly. "They are fine on spreadsheets. Less fine when attached to one child in one bed." "They told me 70-30 once," he said. In another context, it did not feel good then either. "What did you do?" she asked. "Gedammt." "I stopped asking," he said. They stood like that, side by side, not touching, sharing a tired horizon. A week later, back at the apartment with Lily home and the infection bending to antibiotics, the phone rang on a Tuesday afternoon. Jack almost let it go to voicemail. He was in the middle of adjusting code thresholds on Breather's monitoring software. The caller ID stopped him. "Hayes." He answered. "General," he said. "Jack," Hayes said. "How is she?" "Recovering," Jack said. "She likes the word resilient. I did not teach her that one." "Good," Hayes said. There was a pause, then a shift in his tone. The kind of shift that meant the talk was about to move from personal to official. Old habits told Jack to brace. "I am calling because something finally ground its way through the bureaucracy," Hayes said. "The department is declassifying a portion of Phantom's work. The bad story they hung on you 7 years ago is about to be replaced with the one they should have told." Jack stared at the breather on the table, its small indicator light steady. "Why now?" he asked. "Maus Tuskold, Gistischel." "A confluence of reasons," Hayes said. "Political winds turned. Some of the people who pushed your case retired. Some others grew spines. It helped that your name pinged certain systems recently in a way we could not ignore. The F-22 escort, the acknowledgement on the plane. Jack could hear the shadow of that signal in Hayes' voice. "They want to give you a medal," Hayes said. "They want to hang some words on your chest and take pictures and pretend they knew all along." Jack almost said no right away. The refusal rose fast, a reflex. "I am not interested in a ceremony," he said. "I know," Hayes said. "This is not for you." "Then who is it for?" Jack asked. "For the ghosts who do not get to come home," Hayes said. "For the people who need to hear that what happened to you was wrong. And for one kid who deserves to see her father in a room where everyone else finally stands when he walks in." Jack closed his eyes briefly. "There will be cameras," he said. "There will," Hayes said. "We can keep them at a distance. We can make sure she is not front and center, but we cannot make this invisible, not if it is going to mean anything." He thought about Lily's small face under a clear mask, eyes wide with effort. He thought about her at the table correcting him about the shape of clouds. He thought about her on the plane whispering that mountains made their own rules. "I will think about it," he said. "You do that," Hayes said, "but think quickly. The date is set. 2 weeks from Friday, Pentagon Auditorium. I will send details." After he hung up, Jack stared at the silent phone. He did not have to wait long before Aurora messaged. "Busy?" He typed back. "Apparently not." She called instead of replying. "Hayes called you?" she said, skipping greeting. "He moves fast," Jack said. "He mentioned the ceremony to me last month," she said. "I told him you would hate it." "I do," Jack said. "Then I told him you might go anyway," she said. He sat down at the table. "I do not need a stage to know what I did," he said. "No," she said. "You do not, but some wrong stories only get replaced by standing in the new one." He rubbed the bridge of his nose. "If I go, Lily will want to be there," he said. "Yes," Aurora said. "I do not want her dragged into someone else's performance," he said. Make it yours then, she said. Bring her as your guest, not as a prop. Let her see you choose to walk in and walk out on your own terms. He was quiet. Do you want to be there? He asked. Yes, she said. The word came without hesitation. I wanted to watch certain people have to clap. He huffed out something that was nearly a laugh. From the other room, cartoons drifted faintly, Lily's giggle stitched through the soundtrack. She appeared in the doorway a minute later, hair mussed, socks mismatched. Who was that? She asked. General Hayes, Jack said. Does he still have the snoring dogs? She asked. As far as I know, Jack said. What did he want? She asked. Jack held her gaze. He did not want to hide this. Hiding had cost enough. He wants me to go to Washington, he said, to stand in a fancy room while some people say they should not have said mean things about me before. Lily blinked. Like when the teacher says sorry for yelling at the wrong kid, she asked. More or less, he said. Will there be snacks? She asked. Tsinged? Probably, he said. Will they give you a shiny thing? She asked. Looks like it, he said. She considered. I want to go, she said. You might be bored, he said. I want to see them not be mean to you, she said. Something tightened in his chest. It is a lot of noise, he said. Cameras, speeches. They made you sad before, right? She said. Yes, he said. Then they should have to look at your face when they say sorry, she said. Aurora was still on the line, listening quietly. Jack could almost feel her nod. All right, he said. We will go. Lily smiled quick and bright. I need a dress that lets me breathe, she said. And shoes that do not squeak. Squeaky shoes are rude in important rooms. She ran back to her room, already muttering to herself about colors. Jack stayed where he was, phone cooling in his hand. The future condensed into a date on a calendar he had not asked for, but would meet anyway. Washington felt heavier than Denver. Not in the air, which was damp and mild, but in the way buildings leaned on the sky. Marble glass stone flags, symbols stacked on symbols. Jack kept one hand on Lily's shoulder as they walked up the steps toward the Pentagon visitor entrance. Her dress was dark blue with small silver dots, like someone had spilled stars across the fabric. Her shoes were soft-soled and quiet. Aurora walked on Jack's other side, the line of her suit simple and sharp. She had argued for renting a car instead of taking the government sedan Hayes had sent. Jack had agreed. The driver had understood enough to keep conversation to a minimum. Security was tighter than any airport. IDs checked, badges issued, bags scanned. The guard who examined Lily's inhaler and breather cannula gave them back with a small nod that carried more understanding than his words. Inside the Pentagon was all corridors and angles. Signs pointed toward auditoriums, command's history displays. The floors were polished enough to catch reflections in quick flashes. Lily walked between the two adults, head-turning eyes trying to drink in every detail. There are no windows, she whispered. There are some, Jack said, just not here. It feels like being inside a big thinking box, she said. Aurora glanced down at her. It is exactly that she said. General Hayes met them at a junction lined with framed photographs. Old planes, new ones, people shaking hands. He looked different in this building. The uniform fit more tightly into the space here, less out of place than on a commercial flight. His posture shifted into the version of him that belonged on walls and in briefings. Glad you made it, he said. He offered his hand to Lily first. She shook it solemnly. Do they know you have dogs? She asked. Some of them suspect, he said, but they have no proof. He looked at Jack with something like pride and something like apology in his eyes. They are already seated, he said. We have a few minutes before it starts. There is a room where you can wait if you want to avoid the pre-show. Jack nodded. That would be good. The waiting room was smaller and warmer than the corridors. A tray of water bottles sat on a center table. A large seal on the wall watched over the chairs. Lily sat and swung her feet inhaler within easy reach. Jack adjusted the breather line behind her ear fingers gentle. You sure about this? He asked her quietly. You already said yes, she said. I am just here to witness. Aurora stood near the door, reading the printed program with a small frown. They put you in the middle, she said, not tacked on at the end. Is that good? Jack asked. It means you are not an afterthought, she said. An aide appeared at the door, young and stiff in his dress uniform. They are ready for you, sir, he said to Hayes. Hayes looked at Jack. You can walk in now, he said, or wait until they call you. Your choice. Jack weighed the options for a second, then shook his head. If I have to do this, I will do it from the beginning, he said. They moved as a small group through another corridor and into the wings of the auditorium. The hum of a crowd met them, muted but palpable. The room beyond the curtain glowed under stage lights. From their side position, Jack could see part of the stage. A podium flagged several chairs. A table with small blue boxes laid out in a neat row. "Those your shiny things," Lily whispered. "Looks like it," he said. A voice at the podium finished an introduction to someone else. There was applause, then another speech. Jack heard his own name mentioned once in a list. It sounded like it belonged to someone else. Finally, Hayes stepped up to the microphone. The room quieted in a way that felt different from ordinary respect. There was history in it. "We are here today to correct a record," he said. "The official version of events that we stamped into files 7 years ago left out some important truths." Jack felt his throat tighten. Lily's hand found his. "In the interest of expedience and political convenience," Hayes continued, "we allowed a narrative to stand that suggested incompetence, even malice, where there had been sacrifice. We hung the weight of a failure on someone who had in fact absorbed damage to protect operations and personnel who could not be named." He did not look toward the side of the stage where Jack waited, but his voice carried in that direction. "For years that story stayed in the shadows where it was not challenged," Hayes said. "Today it changes. Not because the person we wronged asked for it, but because some debts echo loud enough that even bureaucracy has to listen." There was a rustle in the audience, suits, shifting uniforms, straightening. Colonel Jack Mercer Hayes said, "Would you join us on stage, please?" The title hit the air and seemed to hang there. Jack exhaled, once let go of Lily's hand, and stepped out. The lights were brighter than he expected. Faces blurred into a sea of shapes and colors. He was aware of the cameras, of the sound of shutters, even if they were digital and quiet. His footsteps echoed softly on the stage floor. He came to stand beside Hayes. The general placed a hand briefly on his shoulder, grounding the moment. 7 years ago, Hayes said Colonel Mercer accepted full responsibility for an operational outcome that was shaped by decisions far above his rank. He did so because telling the full truth would have exposed sensitive programs and endangered lives. He chose silence over vindication. Hayes opened one of the blue boxes on the table. The metal inside caught the light metal bright against dark velvet. "Today we acknowledge what that silence cost," Hayes said, "and we return in part what was taken." He pinned the metal to Jack's lapel with careful fingers. Jack stood still, jaw tight. The weight of the metal itself was nothing. The implied weight behind it pressed harder. He took a small step back when Hayes finished, as if to make room for the next rehearsal of words. Instead, Hayes surprised him. "Colonel Mercer has never been one for speeches," Hayes said, a dry note in his voice. "He prefers actions. But I believe there is someone here better suited to address the importance of this moment than any of us in uniform." He looked toward the wing. "Lily," he said gently, "would you like to come up?" The room shifted. Heads turned. Lily froze for a second, eyes wide. Jack felt his heart jump. Before he could move, Aurora leaned down to her. "You can say no," Aurora whispered. Lily swallowed, then shook her head. "I want to," she said. She walked out in small, steady steps, the breather tube a pale line against her cheek, her dress catching little flashes of light. The podium loomed in front of her. Hayes lowered the microphone so it met her height. From the back she looked impossibly small. She cleared her throat. The sound was tiny. The sound system carried it to the far corners of the room. "Hi," she said. A few chuckles rippled, gentle and encouraging. "My name is Lily," she continued. "I am 7. I am here because my dad does not like talking like this, but he said this day is important." She glanced up at Jack. He managed a small nod. "When I was little," she said, "people said things about my dad that made his face look tight. They said he did bad stuff. I did not understand the words, but I understood the face." She took a breath that the microphone picked up the faint hiss of assisted air. "At home," she said, "he did things like cut my toast into triangles and count my medicines and sit on the floor with me when I could not breathe and make jokes so I would not be scared." She looked out at the rows of uniforms and suits. "He always told me honor was not what people said about you in rooms like this," she said. "It was what you knew about yourself when nobody was watching." The room went very still. "But also," she said, "sometimes it is nice when people in rooms like this remember what is true." Her mouth twisted as she searched for the next line. "So," she said, "thank you for fixing the story. He never stopped being a hero. You just stopped seeing him." Silence held for a fraction of a heartbeat, then broke into sound. The first claps were scattered, then gathered. People stood row by row, the movement like a wave. Military brass, civilian officials, staff. Cameras flashed, but for once they felt like background. Jack felt his vision blur in a way that had nothing to do with the lights. He blinked hard. Lily turned to look at him, seeking confirmation that she had done something useful. "You did great," he said, the words thick. Aurora stood at the back of the auditorium, hands together, fingers pressed under her chin. She had told herself she would remain composed, that this was Jack's moment, not hers. When Lily said you just stopped seeing him, something in her chest gave way. Tears slid down before she could stop them. She did not wipe them at once. For a rare moment, she let them be. Hayes bent toward the microphone. I do not think anything I say will improve on that, he said. So, we will end this part here. The applause slowly subsided. People sat. The program moved on to other recognitions, other names. The air in the room stayed changed. Afterward, there were handshakes and congratulations in the narrow space behind the stage. Senior officers approached Jack with expressions that mixed respect and discomfort, as if they were seeing him for the first time, and realizing they had passed him in halls before without looking properly. You were done wrong, one of them said quietly. Jack nodded once, accepting the words without letting them attach too deep. Lily held his metal card between her fingers, reading the inscription with careful lips. Can we put it on the wall? She asked. If you want, he said. In the kitchen, she said, near the toaster, where the important stuff is. He smiled. Aurora found them near the side exit, away from most of the crowd. She had wiped her cheeks by then, but her eyes were still red at the edges. You survived, she said to Jack. Barely, he said. She knelt so she was level with Lily. You were extraordinary, she said. I build systems that try to predict behavior. I would never have predicted that line. Lily blinked. Which line, she asked. The one about people not seeing him, Aurora said. It is true, Lily said. Sometimes people forget to look. Aurora glanced at Jack, then back at Lily. Not anymore, she said. Outside, the sky over the Pentagon was a pale, ordinary blue. Flags snapped in a light breeze. Cars moved along the ring roads in orderly lines. Jack stepped out onto the pavement with the metal box in his pocket, his daughter's hand in his, and the odd sensation that some internal weight had shifted, making room for something new to settle there. The metal hung in the kitchen. Not in a shadow box or a locked drawer. On a small hook near the toaster where Lily had decreed important things went. It sat above a cluster of refrigerator magnets shaped like fruits and planets, and below a drawing of a mountain shaped like a triangle with arms. Sometimes visitors noticed it and stared. The metal caught the morning light when Jack made coffee. He did not look at it often. Knowing it was there was enough. The weeks after Washington settled into a different kind of normal. The ceremony did not change how bills arrived or how Lily's medications tasted. It did alter the way some doors opened. Conversations with hospital directors became shorter. Paperwork for the breather trials moved faster. People who had once been cautious around Jack now held his gaze a little longer, as if they finally understood that the quiet man with the calloused hands had lived more lives than they had guessed. Through it all, the dinners continued. Aurora kept her end of the bargain. Some weeks she arrived straight from the airport, rolling suitcase in tow, still smelling like recycled air and perfumed strangers. Other weeks she walked over from a Kane Systems satellite office jacket, draped over her arm, shoulders loosened. She learned how to chop onions without crying. She burned a grilled cheese once and insisted on eating it anyway. She fell asleep on the couch more than once while Lily narrated cartoons, her head tipped back, hair undone. There were small signs that the lines of their lives had begun to weave. A book of Aurora's sat on the shelf next to Jack's old manuals, its spine cracked from use. One of Jack's hoodies appeared in Aurora's bag when she traveled. A photo on the kitchen wall showed the three of them, in front of the Pentagon Lily's dress, wrinkled Jack's tie slightly crooked, Aurora's hand resting lightly on Lily's shoulder. The seasons turned. Summer heat baked the streets. Fall came with apologies in the form of cooler evenings. Leaves gathered on the sidewalks. Breath showed in front of mouths again. A year after the first flight to Colorado, Denver's air was thin and bright. The Kane Mercer Institute for Pulmonary Innovation stood near the edge of the city, where buildings began to give way to open space, and the mountains watched from a distance. Glass and steel caught the morning sun. The entrance had broad steps and a smooth ramp. New trees waited in square patches of earth, their roots just starting to learn the soil. Crowds clustered near the main doors. Some wore lab coats, some wore suits. Some wore the plain clothes of people who had come because someone they loved was having trouble breathing. A banner hung above the entrance. Kane Mercer Institute. The logo next to the words was simple. Two curved lines intertwined to suggest a pair of lungs. A third line arched between them, forming a soft triangle. Lily had declared it not ugly when she saw the designs which the branding team took as approval. In front of the building, a small stage had been set up. A ribbon strung across two posts weighted red against gray stone. A microphone stood on a thin pole. Lily stood near the ribbon holding a pair of scissors almost as big as her forearm. She wore a white dress with a pale blue cardigan. A thin, nearly invisible tube rested under her nose, looping over her ears. The latest version of Breather sat in a small pouch at her hip, humming quietly. She bounced on her toes, careful not to tangle the line. Jack watched her from the first row of folding chairs. He wore a suit that fit better than the one from Washington, though he still tugged at the collar sometimes. The metal ribbon did not appear today. This was not that kind of ceremony. Aurora stood at the edge of the stage talking with a group of reporters. She had on a dark green suit that matched the pine trees in the distance. Her questions were answered efficiently, with enough detail to satisfy without drifting into jargon. In a partnership between private tech and clinical expertise, she was saying, "We are not promising miracles. We are building tools. Breather is one of them." A reporter nodded toward Lily. "Is that the first patient to use it?" she asked. Aurora looked over. "She is one of the first," Aurora said. "She is also one of the reasons it exists." Her gaze found Jack's. Something moved between them that had nothing to do with shareholders or clinical trial phases. An organizer tapped her watch. Aurora stepped up to the microphone. "Thank you for being here," she said. Her voice carried across the crowd and echoed slightly off the building facade. "When we started Kane Systems, our focus was invisible threats. Code, networks, the places where attacks leave no debris." She glanced at Jack and Lily. "Along the way, some of us were reminded that not all battles happen in machines," she said. "Some happen in bodies, in lungs that work harder than they should, in nights spent listening for the next breath." Heads nodded in the audience. A woman in the second row blinked rapidly, eyes shining. "This institute represents a commitment to those fights," Aurora said. "The work here is not separate from our other efforts. It is an extension, a recognition that defense and care are not so different when you look closely." She paused. "I could talk about funding and partnerships and years of research," she said. "I would rather let someone else speak first." She stepped back and gestured toward the little girl at the ribbon. "Lily," she said, "would you do the honors?" Lily moved forward, scissors clutched in both hands. The crowd quieted. The breather at her side hummed on. "Do I say something?" Lily whispered to Aurora. "If you want," Aurora murmured. Lily looked at the faces watching her. She chewed her lip for a second. "Hi," she said into the microphone. She did not seem intimidated by the repetition. "I used to think hospitals were the only place that could help me breathe," she said. "Now there is also this place. That is good. More places is better." She looked back at the ribbon. "I like that my name is on the sign with Ms. Kane and my dad," she added. "It means we did something together." She raised the scissors. "And I hope a lot of kids get to breathe easier because of this," she said, "including me." The blades met the ribbon. It took 2 squeezes to get through. On the second, the fabric snapped. The crowd clapped, the sound rolling down the steps and bouncing back. Flashbulbs popped. The doors behind the ribbon opened. Inside, polished floors, bright walls, and carefully placed plants waited. Jack joined Lily on the stage. She rushed into his side. "I did not trip," she said, pleased. "You did perfect," he said. Aurora stepped closer. For a moment, they stood in a tight triangle, the building at their backs, the mountains in front, the crowd around. "You were composed," Aurora told Lily. "I saw at least 3 generals in the audience check their posture." Lily grinned. "Maybe they should breathe with us," she said. The tours began. Groups filtered inside to see labs with glass walls, rooms full of machines that hummed, offices with windows that framed slices of the Rockies. There was a demonstration room where a model of the breather sat under a spotlight, its internal components exposed on a screen beside it. Lily grew tired midway through the second circuit. Jack noticed the slight drag in her steps, the way she leaned a little more on the handrail. "Break time," he said. She did not argue. They slipped away from the cluster down a quiet side corridor that led to a side exit. Outside, the air was cold and clean. A strip of grass bordered the building. Beyond it, a low fence, a parking area, and then open land stretching toward the first foothills. Jack guided Lily to a bench. "Sit," he said. "Let breather show off." She settled, her shoulders relaxing. The device adjusted to her slower breathing with a soft shift in tone. Her chest rose and fell, less strained. Aurora found them there a few minutes later, having escaped her own tour group with an excuse about a phone call. "You hiding?" she asked. "Resting," Jack said. Lily patted the space beside her. "You can rest too," she said. "Big days are hard." Aurora sat. For a while, none of them spoke. They watched a hawk circle lazily high above a dark shape against the pale sky. From this angle, the Institute building did not look imposing, just new, possibility in concrete form. "It is strange," Aurora said quietly, "seeing your name on a place that will outlast you." Feels like a call sign carved into something bigger, Jack said. Lily pointed up. Look, she said. A plane crossed the sky far above them, leaving a thin white line in its wake. The contrail stretched, then slowly blurred as the wind took it. Do you think someone on that plane is getting a surprise today? Lily asked. Could be, Jack said. Aurora followed the line with her eyes, remembering a different contrail, a different day. Her life divided into before and after that flight, without her noticing until much later. Lily drew a small triangle in the condensation on her breather's outer casing with a fingertip. She said. 3 dots, connected. Jack looked at her, then at Aurora, then at the building that bore their names. Seems accurate, he said. Aurora rested her hand lightly on the bench between them, not touching his, but close enough that if either moved, contact would be easy. I got an email this morning, she said, from a parent whose child is in the early breather trial. They said last night was the first night in a year they did not wake up to count breaths. Lily smiled. Smile slow and genuine. Breather is a good friend, she said. Jack nodded, feeling something settle in his chest that he had not trusted for a long time. Not certainty, not complacency. Just a sense that all the quiet work, all the long nights and hard choices had changed the shape of their world in ways that could be seen and touched. The hawk wheeled once more and slipped out of view. The contrail thinned, the mountains stayed. Lily leaned back against the bench, eyes half closed, breathing in air that asked less of her than it used to. Jack and Aurora sat on either side of her, the 3 of them a small steady shape against the wide landscape anchored by shared gravity and the simple rhythm that tied their days together. Her fingers brushed his again as they began to clear the table. This time, the contact was not part of a performance. It was an accident they did not rush to correct. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.